guys, so today we're going to be talking about X and Y intercepts, okay? So your X, the point at which your line intersects with the X-axis is called the X-intercept. We haven't done as much with the X-intercept lately. We've done more of the Y-intercept. Okay, guys? You can write your X-intercept as X0. There are some other names for your X-intercept, okay? The other names for your X-intercept are zeros or roots, okay? So if I ask you for the zero of a function, I am asking for the X-intercept of a function. If I ask you for the root of a function, I'm asking you for the X-intercept, okay? So if we look at this graph over here, my X-intercept would be down here where it crosses the X-axis. So this would be what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So your X-intercept in this case would be 8, 0. Notice your value, your number value is always in the X coordinate. And the X-intercept, your 0 is always in the Y coordinate, okay? So your Y value for your X-intercept is always 0. Now, for our Y-intercept, we've done a few things with our Y-intercept, right? We've looked at our Y-intercept. This is 0y. Mostly, we've looked at it in the slope-intercept form equation, right? When we've done, it's the B in y equals mx plus b, right? It's this guy right here, this b, okay? It is where it crosses your y-axis, where it intersects with your y-axis. So on this particular line, your y-intercept would have been up here, and the y-intercept would have been at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's also at 8, but we would write this as 0, 8. All right, guys, y'all feel okay with that? So we have an X-intercept and we have a Y-intercept. Now, if you are going to be finding your X-intercept algebraically in an equation, remember we write our X-intercept as X0. What you do is you set the Y equal to 0. Oops. That was interesting what I was doing there. Okay. So you set your Y equal to 0. Because, guys, check it out. In your X-intercept, your Y value is always equal to 0. What am I doing here? Okay. It is always equal to 0. To find your Y-intercept of an equation, we have 0y. You set the X equal to 0. Okay, because in your Y-intercept, that X value is always 0. So for example, I'm going to do these two. I'm going to kind of do this side for my X, this side for my Y. So we have this equation, 3x minus 2y equals 0. So if we want to find our X-intercept, we're going to set the Y equal to 0. So I'm going to say 3x minus 2 times 0 equals 12. You guys feel good about that? So this is for my X-intercept. I guess I didn't write that. Sorry about that. That's for my X-intercept. So this becomes 3x equals 12, because negative 2 times 0 is just 0. So I divide both sides by 3, and my X is equal to what? 4. So I would write this as my X-intercept of 4, 0. Does that make sense, y'all? I would write it as the point, 4, 0. Okay. For my Y-intercept, we now are going to set my X equal to 0. So I'm going to say 3 times 0 minus 2y is equal to 12. So that just becomes negative 2y is equal to 12. We divide both sides by negative 2, and my y is equal to negative 6. So if I wanted to write that as a point, I would write it as 0, negative 6. Do y'all feel good about that? Awesome. Okay? Now, what I want to do is I want to show you guys kind of a cool method that I do when I do this, okay? When it's set up in standard form, you can use a method called cover and solve. Okay? So, we kind of did this up here where we had to plug in the 0 and do all this stuff. I want to skip this first step where we have to plug in the 0. Okay? So check it out. On number 1 here, for my x-intercept, I am going to cover the y because it's like I'm setting it equal to 0. Does that make sense? So what does my equation become? I guess I'll use my pinky because it's a little smaller. It just becomes x is equal to what? 2. Do I even have to divide anything? Are we done? Yes. Isn't that beautiful? So that means my x-intercept would be 2, 0. Okay. For my y-intercept over here, if we do the cover and solve method, then I'm going to go here and I'm going to cover up my x. So this becomes negative y equals 2. Are we done? No. Not quite. What do we need to do here? Divide by negative 1. So my y is equal to negative 2. Okay? Now guys, if you get to this step where you say negative y equals 2, and then you jump straight to y equals negative 2, that's fine with me. If you don't show the dividing by negative 1, that's okay. But your y is equal to negative 2, so we would write it as 0, negative 2. So we're kind of skipping the step there where we're actually writing in the 0. Does that make sense? The covering and solve is kind of nice. Okay, let's try number 2. Okay, you're going to have about 5 questions on your homework where you're going to have to do this, okay? So for my x-intercept, I'm going to cover up my y. So what does my equation become? 8x equals negative 10. Okay, so then we divide by 8. And my x is equal to negative 10 over 8, which is just negative 5/4. Do y'all feel good about that? So then I go over here and I write my x-intercept as a coordinate point, negative 540. Okay? So it's super, super important that when you give me your answer, you write it as a coordinate point. Okay? Then we go here. Now we cover and solve for our y. So this becomes 10y equals negative 10. So we divide by 10.
I found this on the web.
Ooh, Siri, I don't want to talk to you. Okay, so then we divide both sides by 10. And we get y equals negative 1. So we would write that as 0, negative 1. Okay? So on these, when I'm asking for the x and the y-intercept, make sure you write it as coordinate points. I'm going to change that. So you want to write as coordinate points. Okay, that's super, super important that you write your x and your y-intercept as those coordinate points. All right, guys? All right, let's look at number 3 here. Okay, is this one in standard form? What form is this in, y'all? Y equals, so what form is that out of our 3? Slope intercept, standard, or point slope? Slope intercept. Guys, do we know what our y-intercept is right away just by looking at the equation? What is it? That is the y-intercept because it's in slope intercept form. So your B is equal to 2 right here. So guys, your y-intercept is 0, 2. Did we have to do any covering and solving to see that one? No, it's already in that format, right? You could cover and be like, oh, y is equal to 2. Okay? That's your y-intercept. Now your x-intercept is a little tricky to find when you're in slope-intercept form. Because if I cover this, well, then it's equal to nothing, right? So we would have to write this as 0 equals negative 4/3 x plus 2. So we want to solve for our x-intercept here. So guys, what I would do is I would move your 4/3 x over to this other side. Does that sound like a good idea? So let's add 4/3 x to both sides so it cancels out. And we are left with 4/3 x is equal to 2. Okay, now I'm going to kind of write this back up here because this is just taking a little more room than I wished. So 4/3 x equals 2. So now what do I do to get rid of that coefficient there? You can divide by 4/3. You can also multiply by that reciprocal, right? So if I divide by 4/3, that's really the same thing as multiplying both sides by 3/4. Do y'all feel okay with that? So we are left with x is equal to 6/4, which is really the same thing as 3/2. Do y'all feel good about that? So my x-intercept in this case was 3/2, 0. So guys, is it okay for you to have non-integer intercepts? Yes. We like to give you nice, pretty whole ones, okay, because it's easier to graph, but in the real world, it's not always going to be like that. So that's 3/2, 0. Okay? Now with x and y intercepts, guys, the biggest thing that people will screw up is flopping these, swapping those, like making that 0, 2 instead of 2, 0, right? We're making it negative 2, 0. So guys, you have to remember, when you have an x-intercept, you have an x value. When you have a y-intercept, you have a y value. When you have an x-intercept, you have an x value. The y is 0. Y-intercept, y value, x is 0. You guys feel okay with that? Awesome. All right, let's keep going. All right, this next page is the top is going to be real quick. All right, guys? So if you have to find the x and the y-intercepts from tables or sets of points, how you do this is you just have to find, for your x-intercept, what are we looking for? What is equal to 0 for your x-intercept? You want to find when y is equal to 0. So yes, on this very first one, you're absolutely right. That would be your x-intercept, all right? 2, 0. Y'all feel good about that? For your y-intercept, you need to find when x is equal to 0. So in this case, on number 4, it would just be here. So your y-intercept would be 0, 10. Now, if you just put 2 and you just put 10, that's not correct. I want you to actually write the point. Does that make sense? I want you to actually write the point there. Okay? So the same is going to be true for our set of points here. Okay? Your x-intercept is when y is equal to 0. So this guy right here would be your x-intercept. And this guy right here, 0, negative 2, would be your y-intercept. So what I want you guys to do is I want you guys to go ahead and do your x and your y-intercepts for numbers 5 and 7. If you guys want to circle them, you can. If you guys just Because like I said, this is one of those things that is so simple, it's easy to screw up, if that makes sense. Because you don't put a ton of brain power into it. So guys, it's so easy to accidentally mess up those X and the Y-intercepts. But remember, your X-intercept always has an X value. So we have 8, 0, and all right. How is that? Identifying the X and the Y-intercepts. That's not too bad, right, y'all? Not too bad. Okay. Any questions on these 4? I know I went really fast, but that's because they're just really fast. Do you guys feel good about these? I know they're simple, but I don't want us to like fly past it so fast that we're like, oh, I don't need to worry about it. Okay. Now, for numbers 8, 9, 10, and 11, what I want you guys to see for these bottom 3, or these bottom 4. On last week, when we were graphing from standard form, I was having you guys convert to slope-intercept and then graphing the Y-intercept and the slope, right? I want to show you guys a different method that I think is actually a little bit faster. Now, the nice thing about the slope-intercept is you will get it right every time. You can put it in your calculator. You can check. You can, if you follow that same format, it will become very easy and repetitive to do. However, graphing your X and your Y-intercepts is also really nice from standard form, especially with the whole cover and solve. So number 8 is pretty simple. If I cover up my Y, what is my X equal to? 3. So that's just X equals 3. So guys, I can go here and I can graph 3, 0. Do y'all feel good about that? So I'm going to graph 3, 0. If I cover up my X, what is my Y-intercept? 3. So that would be, your Y-intercept would be 0, 3. So I'm going to go here and graph this. Now this is why everyone was supposed to grab a ruler when they came in. Because now, if you have 2 points, can you graph a line? Yes. So now you can go through here and you can just graph your line like so. Isn't that so easy? Do you think that's a little bit nicer than having to convert it and then graph? It depends on what you think is easier. Some folks like to convert it to slope-intercept form every time. Other folks like to find those X and the Y-intercepts. So here we go. For number 9, if we cover and solve here, that's going to be negative 4x equals 20. So that's negative 4x equals 20. You divide both sides by negative 4. So what is my x equal to? Negative 5. So I'm going to graph the point negative 5, 0. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay? Then we're going to cover and solve for the y here. So that becomes 5y equals 20. Divide both sides by 5. My y is equal to 4. So I'm going to graph the point 0, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Once I have my 2 points, can I do my line? Yes, I can. So what do y'all think of that? Do you guys like that method? Not so much? All right. What I want you guys to do, even if this is not your preferred method, I would like you to go ahead and do numbers 10 and 11 like this, where you guys graph it using the slope intercept, okay? So, or you not graph it using the the X and Y intercepts. All right, guys? So I want you guys to go ahead and do that for numbers 10 and 11. All right? Find your X and your Y intercept, and then go ahead and do this. I'm going to do it right up here. 9x equals 45. Try to do it on your own. Awesome. A lot of you guys can probably just see the X and the Y intercepts right away. That is totally fine. However, guys, remember, the more work you show me, the more opportunity you have for partial credit. Because if you are just human and you get something wrong, like we all do sometimes, and you would like some partial credit, okay, that is okay. Then make sure you show me your way of thinking. Okay, I cannot read your brains, cannot read your minds. All right, so this is what these two lines should have looked like for numbers 10 and 11. Do I have any questions about graphing my X and my Y intercepts? Do y'all feel pretty good about this? Pretty good? What is it, 3, 5? Does that look pretty good, y'all? Now, for number 11, what was my X-intercept? Was it a nice, clean number? No, what was it? It was 7/2, right? Or 3.5. It was kind of an annoying number. Okay? So, guys, it was a little bit annoying, but that's okay. So I said, oh, well, 7/2 is the same thing as 3.5, so I just kind of graphed in the middle there at 3.5. All right? It's okay. Once again, because I showed my work and I showed that it was 3.50, even if it's not perfect, I would have known what you guys would have been doing. Do you guys feel pretty good about graphing those X and the Y intercepts? Y'all feel good? Awesome. Okay, so now we are going to talk about something new, okay? We're going to shift brains just a little bit. We are going to be talking about how to write equations for vertical and horizontal lines, okay? So, guys, vertical lines, first of all, what is the slope of a vertical line, y'all? Undefined. Remember our little, so this has an undefined slope. That's super important. What's the slope of my horizontal line? That's going to be a 0 slope, right? So we have a 0, remember our little song, 0, positive, undefined, negative, 0, positive, undefined, negative, 0, positive, undefined, negative. That's the slope of a line. Okay? So that helps us remember our slopes, but that doesn't help us too much with our equations. So what we do is we have a little acronym that will help you guys, okay? So when we are talking about vertical lines, it is written in the form of x equals a, where a represents the x-intercept. So what I want you guys to think of is I want you guys to think of this little acronym right here. It's called VUX, okay? Now VUX stands for vertical line, has an undefined slope, and it's written as an x equals the x-intercept. Okay? So VUX. Vertical lines have an undefined slope, and x equals the x-intercept. So in this case, my x-intercept is what? In this example, that's 3, 0, right? So that means my equation is simply x equals 3. That's the equation for a vertical line. X equals a number. Okay, whatever the x-intercept is. For your horizontal lines, so the acronym for vertical lines was VUX. The acronym for horizontal lines is HOY. Yes. So VUX and HOY. Okay? because the H stands for horizontal line. The O stands for a zero slope. And the Y stands for Y equals the Y-intercept. Okay? So in this case over here, VUX and HOY here, what is my Y-intercept of this horizontal line? Ooh, I think it's -1, isn't it? Y'all good with that? 0, -1? So that means the graph is Y equals -1. That's it. So your horizontal line is written as Y equals the number, where the number is your X-intercept, or your Y-intercept. So guys, I like to write the little VUX or HOY next to each little thing. Because guys, once again, this is one of those really simple things that it's very easy to confuse and mix up with one another. So let's look at a couple of these guys here. For number 1, is this a vertical or a horizontal line? Vertical. So I'm going to write VUX here so I don't forget. Okay? And it's going to be here. What is the X-intercept? -2. So my equation is X equals -2. Because of VUX, it's X equals -2. Okay? For number 2 here, is this horizontal or vertical? Horizontal. So I'm going to write HOY. What is my value for my Y-intercept? 3. So it's just Y equals 3. That's it, y'all. Okay, number 3, is it a horizontal or vertical line? Horizontal. It's way down there at the bottom, isn't it? Okay, my line's down here. So my 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So my Y is equal to -5. Okay? So guys, these right here show us those horizontal and vertical lines. And actually, if you go onto your calculator and you actually graph Y equals 3, it'll graph that horizontal line for you. If you go and graph Y equals -5, it'll graph that horizontal line for you. Is it possible for me to graph an X equals equation on the calculator? No, we only have Y equals. Also, what's the slope of a vertical line? Undefined. Can I graph an undefined slope on the calculator? No, I can't. It'll give me an error. So guys, for 4, 5, and 6, I want you guys to tell me if it's a HOY or a VUX, and then give me the equation of the line. Okay? Hopefully you guys are getting this. Number 5 is the only one that I would say is a little bit trickier. What equation did you get for number 5, Rika? Yes, your X is equal to 0 because it's right there on the origin. Your X-intercept is at the origin, so it's X equals 0. So we had X is equal to 4, X is equal to 0, Y is equal to 2. Do y'all feel pretty good about those? Awesome. All right, let's keep moving. I don't want to like blow past it too fast, but I also want to make sure that we're feeling good about these guys. Okay? I want to give y'all more time if I can. Okay, now guys, when we're graphing these equations, we want to think the opposite. So guys, if this is Y equals, is that VUX or HOY? HOY. So we are thinking horizontal, right? A horizontal line at 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So all you do right there, you take your little handy dandy ruler and you graph a horizontal line. Now, if you don't have a ruler and you just want to sketch it, that's okay, but just try to be as neat as possible. That's why I give everyone a ruler so you guys can actually make it kind of neat. Okay? For number 8 here, is this x equals what? Is that a VUX or a HOY? VUX. So guys, it's silly, but go ahead and write HOY and VUX next to your equations, because then you will be way less likely to get it wrong. So because it's a VUX, that's a vertical line, and that's at x equals -1. So if I did this without my ruler, it would be like so. Okay? So I want you guys to go ahead and do 9, 10, 11, and 12. I want you to practice identifying if it is a VUX or a HOY. And then I want you guys to go ahead and graph those lines. Okay? I just did both my vertical ones first. How are you guys feeling about this? Pretty good? Or not so much? Am I going too fast? Am I going too slow? Maybe. Alright guys? So this is going to be quite a bit of your homework, where you are literally just graphing horizontal and vertical lines. Alright? So it's not uber complicated. The biggest thing that's why I like writing the HOY and the VUX, because then you are so much more likely to get it correct. Okay? Because you're like, oh, HY equals HOY, horizontal line. You know, so it helps, that little acronym will help you there. All right. Any questions on these 4? Do you guys feel pretty good about those? Awesome. We had x is equal to 3, so it went through the x-axis at 3. Y is equal to -2, went through the y-axis at -2. Y equals 4, went through the y-axis at 4. And x equals -7, went through that x-axis at -7. So guys, what is the slope of y equals 4? Well, if it's y equals, is that VUX or HOY? HOY. So that means it's going to be a horizontal line. What is my slope, y'all? It's a 0 slope. That HOY, it's a 0 slope. What is the slope of the line x equals -2? Is that VUX or HOY? That's a VUX. So that's a vertical line. What kind of slope do vertical lines have? Undefined. Okay? All right, here we are again. X equals 0. Is that VUX or HOY? VUX. So that's a vertical line with an undefined slope. Okay, guys? Now, one thing that is so nice about the VUX and the HOY is it keeps it straight for you. So which axis is y equals -1 parallel to? Well, guys, y equals a number. Is that VUX or HOY? HOY. So that means my line is going to look like this. So guys, whenever it talks about which axis, parallel, yada, 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 it is so easy to mess this up in your head. So that's why I would draw a little sketch here. So guys, which one is this parallel to, your x or your y? It's parallel to x. Okay. Whoops, not parallel. Parallel. It's just parallel to the x-axis. So a y equals equation is parallel to the x-axis. All right? Which axis is x equals 4 parallel to? Well, guys, is x equals a VUX or a HOY? X equals is a VUX. So that's a vertical line. Okay? If I draw this, I drew a little sketch here. Which axis is it parallel to? The y-axis. So this one is parallel to the y-axis. How do you guys feel about that? Pretty good? All right. So what I want you guys to do now is I want you to graph these two equations. Y equals 3, and then I want you guys to graph y equals 3x. Okay? And I want you to graph both of them, and we're going to explain how they're different from one another. Okay? For y equals 3, what is the slope of that equation? 0. Is this what kind of line is this? Horizontal, vertical, diagonal? What are we dealing with? Y equals 3? Horizontal line. Okay? Because it's y equals a number, you can think HOY for this one. Okay? For y equals 3x, well, guys, what does that 3 represent? That is your slope. Okay? What is my y-intercept in this equation? Oh, a 0. So my y-intercept is 0. My slope is 3, so I'm going to go up 3 over 1, down 3 over 1. I'm going to go ahead and draw my little graph here. So guys, how are these different from one another? What differences do you see between these two graphs? What do y'all see? I can't hear you.
One's a slope and the other one's 0.
One is slanted and one is flat. One has a slope. One of them has a slope of 0. They both have slopes, just one of the slopes is 0. Okay? I like to think about it like this. So I'm going to draw a little box here. So for y equals 3, Ian, what is the slope of y equals 3?
3.
What's the slope of horizontal lines? 0, right? So the slope is 0. What is the y-intercept for y equals 3? It's 3. Okay? Now, guys, technically, could I write this as y equals 0x plus 3? Could I do that? With my 0 slope? Now do you guys see how the slope is 0 and the y-intercept is 3? But 0 times x, do we really need to write that? No, it's just y equals 3. Okay? For y equals 3x, what is the slope of y equals 3x? Your slope is now 3. But what is my y-intercept? 0. Interesting. Okay, I'm going to actually write the 0 here. Guys, I'm actually write the word 0, or the number 0. So guys, for y equals 3, my slope is 0, my y-intercept is 3. For y equals 3x, my slope is 3, but my y-intercept was 0. Do y'all see the differences there? Do you see how it would be very easy to mix those up with one another? And do you see how those are very different equations, aren't they? They're very, very different equations. So guys, they're very different lines, but they're easy to mix up with one another. So I want us to recognize the differences here. You only do the HOY and the VUX when it's y equals a number. If it's y equals 3x, you have to do it just like slope-intercept form. Does that make sense, y'all? Okay? So it would be easy to accidentally kind of mess that guy up there. All right, how are y'all feeling about these? Y'all feel pretty good? Okay, so what we're going to do now is I'm going to pause for a second, and we're going to do pages 5 and 6.